Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be looking at pain.
Ooh.
And not just like the physical kind, but really the whole, kind of the whole experience.
Yeah.
All the stuff that influences it.
Right.
So really excited to jump into that.
Yeah, me too. Pain is such a fascinating topic because our understanding of it has changed so much.
Totally.
We used to think it was just this like simple, like you get hurt and then you feel pain. But
Right.
but now we know it's like this whole web of thoughts and beliefs and, all this other stuff.
Yeah, it's like a language almost,
Totally.
but like one that we're just starting to understand. And it
Yeah.
makes me think about, we've talked before about animal intelligence,
Right.
and how they might experience pain too.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. For a long time, people just kind of relied on anecdotes and
Yeah.
observations about animals.
Right.
But then you have scientists like E.L. Thorndike who really brought animals into the lab. Yeah.
And started doing these experiments.
Right.
Like he's famous for his puzzle boxes
Yeah.
with cats and dogs and chicks
Okay.
where they had to learn how to escape.
Right.
And it really challenged this idea that animals just learn through rewards and punishments.
Oh, so there was like more going on in their heads
Exactly.
than we thought.
More than simple association.
Okay.
One of the coolest things I think that came out of this kind of research
Yeah.
is this idea of blocking
Oh, I've heard of that.
in animal learning.
Yeah.
So let's say an animal learns that a light means food is coming.
Right.
But then you add a sound with the light,
Okay.
like at the same time.
Okay.
The animal won't really pay attention to the sound.
Interesting.
It's like their knowledge of the light blocks, the learning about the sound.
Wow.
It's like they're filtering information.
Okay.
They're focusing on the stuff that matters to them.
So they're kind of choosing what to learn.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, look, we skim an article.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Instead of reading every word.
That's a great analogy.
Right.
And it's a sign of higher level thinking. Makes you wonder what else they're capable of.
Totally. Like, can they understand abstract ideas,
Right?
or plan for the future?
Yeah.
Like, I was reading about chimpanzees using tools
Right.
to fish for termites.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's tool use.
Right.
Which people used to think was
Yeah.
only a human thing.
Yeah.
But we see it all over the animal kingdom.
Oh, wow.
Octopuses carry coconut shells for protection.
What?
Like, imagine that, like a mobile home.
That's crazy.
It's wild.
so cool.
So they can learn,
Okay.
they can use tools,
Mhm.
they can seemingly plan for the future.
Right.
What about memory, though?
Yeah. How do we even know if animals remember stuff
Right.
like we do?
Researchers use all sorts of clever techniques to study animal memory.
Okay.
One is habituation.
Okay.
If an animal reacts less to a stimulus over time.
Yeah. It suggests that they remember it,
Right.
right? They're like, oh, I've seen this before. It's
Yeah.
not a big deal.
Okay.
And then there are tasks where they have to remember something for a short period,
Okay.
like where food was hidden.
Yeah, like my dog.
Exactly.
When he watches me hide his treat
Right.
under a blanket,
Exactly.
and he remembers where it is.
That's working memory,
Oh, okay.
like a mental notepad
Okay.
for recent events.
Cool.
But animals also have long-term memory.
Right.
Remembering things for days or weeks,
Wow.
even years.
Yeah, what about those nutcracker birds
Oh, yeah.
that hide thousands of seeds?
Clark's nutcrackers.
Go away.
Yeah, their spatial memory is insane.
It's crazy.
They're like little GPS units.
Yeah.
And then there's that famous parrot,
Yeah.
Alex, studied by Irene Pepperberg.
Right.
He learned to associate words with meanings.
Yeah.
He could identify objects, colors,
Really?
even concepts like bigger and smaller.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it really blew people's minds.
Totally.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, if animals can do all this,
Right.
what does that mean for how they experience pain?
That's a huge question.
Yeah.
And it leads us to the heart of our deep dive today.
Right.
Pain itself.
Because it's not just about, stubbing your toe and saying, ouch.
No, it's way more complex than that.
Right.
It's not just a reaction to injury.
Right.
It's influenced by our emotions, our thoughts, our past experiences, even our culture.
So I've heard about the gate control theory of pain,
Right.
but I've never really understood how it works.
It's a good one. So imagine a gate in your spinal cord.
Okay.
This gate controls how much pain information goes to your brain.
Right.
And different things can influence the gate,
Okay.
like other sensations, your
Mhm.
emotional state,
Right.
your thoughts.
So if you're distracted by something exciting,
Yeah,
the gate might close a bit
exactly.
and you feel less pain.
And on the flip side, If you're anxious or stressed,
Yeah.
the gate opens wider and the pain feels worse.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why the same injury could feel different depending on
Exactly.
your
It's all
neuroplasticity.
connected.
Wow.
And to make it even more interesting,
Yeah.
pain isn't just one thing.
Right.
It has these different dimensions.
Okay.
So first, there's the sensory discriminative dimension,
Okay.
which is about the physical aspects. Like, where does it hurt?
Right.
How intense is it?
Right.
What kind of pain is it?
Sharp or dull or achy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then we've got the affective motivational dimension.
Okay.
This one's about how the pain makes you feel.
So the emotional side of it.
Right.
The fear and frustration.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And last but not least,
Okay.
the cognitive evaluative dimension.
Okay.
This is where our thoughts and beliefs come in.
So like how we interpret the pain.
Exactly. What meaning we give it.
Right.
And that can really change our experience of it.
Makes sense. Like an athlete who gets injured during a game.
Perfect example.
Right.
They might not even notice the pain until later.
Right. Because they're so focused.
Into what they're doing.
It's amazing how powerful our minds can be.
Totally. So we've got this multidimensional experience.
Oh, wow.
Makes sense that there are different types of pain, too.
Of course.
Right.
And we'll get into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll look at nociceptive pain,
Okay.
neuropathic pain,
Mm.
and even psychogenic pain.
Okay. I'm really interested in that one.
It's a fascinating one for sure.
Right.
Stay tuned.
Right. So it sounds like we're going to really get a better understanding of how pain works.
Yeah. And hopefully some insights on how to manage it better.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
Yeah.
Because understanding pain is ultimately about understanding ourselves
Wow.
and maybe even our place in the world.
Right.
It's all
Yeah.
connected.
So cool. So we've been talking about how complex pain is, right? All of these different dimensions and how our thoughts and emotions can really play a big role in how we experience it. But when pain sticks around for a long time,
Yeah.
we're talking weeks or months, even years,
Right.
that's when we get into chronic pain territory.
Right. And it's not just the physical sensation anymore.
No, it's not.
It's like the constant worry and the limitations it puts on your life.
Exactly.
Like the fear that it might never go away.
Chronic pain can really impact every aspect of a person's life. Their sleep, their ability to concentrate, their relationships.
Mhm.
It can even lead to feelings of hopelessness and isolation.
Wow. It sounds really isolating.
Yeah.
And I imagine managing chronic pain is a lot different than dealing with like a short-term injury.
Oh, absolutely. It's a whole other ballgame. You need a strategy that addresses not just the physical sensations, but also the emotional, psychological, social impacts.
So where do you even start with something like that?
Well, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. The approach is going to depend on the type of pain, the individual situation, their goals. But in general, we can think about pain management in two main categories:
Okay.
physical interventions and psychological interventions.
Okay. So on the physical side, what kind of tools are we talking about?
Well, medications are often part of the plan,
Right.
especially for moderate to severe pain.
Mm-hmm.
Over-the-counter painkillers like acetaminophen or ibuprofen, those can be helpful for mild pain.
Okay.
But for more intense or persistent pain, stronger medications like opioids might be considered.
Right. But I know there's been a lot of concern about the risks of opioids.
Absolutely. Opioids need to be used very cautiously and under close medical supervision because of the potential for dependence and side effects.
What are some of the alternatives to opioids?
There are a lot of options, actually. Physical therapy is a really important one.
Okay.
It focuses on improving strength, flexibility, mobility,
Mm-hmm.
which can all help reduce pain and improve function.
So it's not about just staying still and avoiding activity.
No, not at all. In fact, too much rest can actually make pain and stiffness worse.
Really?
Yeah, movement is key, but of course, the type and intensity of exercise needs to be tailored to the individual.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about things like 10NS units or acupuncture? Have you heard of those?
I have. Yeah, those can be helpful too. 10NS stands for transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation.
Okay.
It involves putting electrodes on the skin that deliver these little electrical impulses,
Interesting.
and that can help disrupt pain signals and provide relief.
Wow.
And then acupuncture, an ancient practice, involves inserting thin needles into specific points on the body.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
The idea is that it stimulates the release of endorphins, which are the body's natural painkillers.
Okay, so those are some of the physical tools,
Mhm.
but what about the psychological side of chronic pain?
That's a huge piece of the puzzle.
Right, because we talked about how our thoughts and emotions play a role.
Exactly. And psychological therapies can be incredibly helpful in helping people cope with the emotional distress and the life disruptions that come with chronic pain.
So what kind of therapies are we talking about?
One approach that's gaining a lot of popularity is acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT.
ACT.
Yeah, it focuses on helping people develop a different relationship with their pain
Okay.
instead of trying to fight it or eliminate it.
Interesting.
It's about accepting the pain is there, but not letting it control your life.
So it's more about learning to live a full life even with the pain.
Exactly. Shifting the focus from pain reduction to living a meaningful life.
I like that.
Right.
What about cognitive behavioral therapy?
CBT is another powerful tool.
Yeah.
It helps people identify and challenge negative thought patterns and behaviors that can actually make pain worse.
Right, because we talked about how our thoughts can influence our experience.
Exactly. CBT gives people tools to manage stress, improve their mood, and that can help reduce the impact of pain on their lives.
Okay. And are there any other techniques that can be helpful?
Mindfulness meditation is another great one. It teaches people to pay attention to the present moment without judgment. And that can be really helpful in managing the emotional distress that goes along with chronic pain.
So it's like a way to detach from the suffering.
Yeah, in a way.
So we've been talking about adults, but what about pain management in kids?
That's a whole other challenge.
Right, because they might not be able to express what they're feeling.
Exactly. Children, especially young children, might not have the words to describe their pain. They might show it through changes in their behavior, like becoming withdrawn or irritable.
So how do you even assess and manage pain in kids who can't really tell you what's wrong?
It takes a lot of careful observation and communication with parents and caregivers.
Right.
There are pain scales specifically designed for children that use pictures or faces to help them communicate how much pain they're in.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And when it comes to treatment, non-pharmacological approaches are usually preferred, especially for younger kids.
Like what kinds of things?
Distraction techniques can be surprisingly effective.
Oh.
Things like blowing bubbles or playing games. Comfort measures like a warm hug or a favorite blanket.
Right.
Relaxation techniques like deep breathing or listening to calming music.
So it's about creating a sense of safety and comfort.
Exactly. And involving parents and caregivers in the pain management plan is really important.
Of course, because they know their kids best.
Exactly.
So we've talked a lot about chronic pain and how to manage it in both adults and children. But given everything we discussed about animal intelligence and sentience, how do these pain management strategies apply to the animal world?
That's a great question. And it takes us into a deeper discussion about the ethics of pain and suffering in animals.
Yeah, I mean, if we acknowledge that animals can experience pain, then it changes how we think about our responsibilities toward them.
Absolutely. And that's a conversation we'll get into in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll explore how our understanding of pain and sentience is shaping our views on animal welfare and influencing everything from veterinary care to the ways we interact with animals in our everyday lives.
Okay, so we've been on this deep dive, looking at how pain works, how it affects us, how we manage it. But now I really want to get into this question of animal pain.
Okay.
Because it feels like where science and ethics kind of
totally
collide.
Yeah, it's a really important intersection.
Right. Because if we're saying that animals can feel pain, maybe even suffering, then it changes how we think about
absolutely
how we treat them.
Changes everything.
Yeah, like everything from the food we eat to, products we buy to just how we interact with animals.
Yeah, and it's a conversation that's happening more and more as we learn more about, animal intelligence and sentience.
So how do we even know if an animal is feeling pain?
Yeah, that's the tough part.
Like they can't just tell us?
Exactly. But we can look for clues in their behavior and their physiology.
So like
do they protect an injured area? Do they make sounds that suggest distress?
Okay.
Do their breathing patterns change?
So we're looking for these outward signs.
Yeah, we're looking for those external indicators.
But it's still not a for sure thing, right?
It's hard to know for sure what's going on in another being's mind.
Even with humans sometimes.
Even with humans, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think we have to err on the side of caution.
Right.
If there's a chance an animal is suffering, we should try to minimize that suffering.
Totally. So how do we actually put this into practice?
Okay.
How does this understanding of animal pain change
Right.
how we live.
Well, in veterinary medicine, there's a much bigger emphasis now on pain management
Oh, that's good.
for animals.
So they're getting pain relief
Yeah,
after surgery, or if they have chronic conditions.
absolutely. And we're getting better at recognizing subtle signs of pain, too,
Okay.
so we can intervene sooner
Okay.
and hopefully prevent some suffering.
But what about outside of the vet's office? What about farming?
Yeah.
Animal research?
Okay.
All that stuff.
That's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
There's definitely a movement towards more humane farming practices.
Okay.
Things like giving animals more space,
Right.
enriching their environments,
Okay.
using pain relief during procedures.
So we're moving away from this idea
Yeah.
of animals as just,
Commodities,
Right.
just things to be used
Yeah.
towards a view that acknowledges they can feel pain
right.
and that they deserve a certain level of well-being.
And what about research?
In research, there's a big push to reduce the number of animals being used
Okay.
and to explore alternatives like computer modeling.
Right.
And when animals are used,
Yeah.
the focus is on making sure they're treated well
Right.
and minimizing any pain or distress.
So it sounds like there's this growing awareness
Yeah,
that we need to consider the ethics of our actions.
absolutely.
Not just for humans, but
We're all creatures.
for all creatures. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's a key takeaway here.
Right.
As we learn more about pain
Mhm.
and intelligence and consciousness in humans and animals,
Yeah.
we have to use that knowledge responsibly
Responsive.
and compassionately.
Right.
It's not just about understanding pain.
Right.
It's about using that understanding to create a more humane world.
For everyone.
For everyone, exactly.
So we're really talking about this interconnectedness,
Yeah.
with all living things,
Totally.
and having this sense of empathy
Mm-hmm.
and respect that goes beyond just us.
And I think that connects back to our understanding of pain.
Right.
When we really get what pain is,
Right.
we understand vulnerability.
Right.
We understand empathy. We understand what it means to be alive.
Beautifully said.
Okay.
Well, on that note, I think we'll leave our listeners to kind of ponder these ideas
Yeah.
and continue their own exploration
That was a fascinating world.
of pain.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us on another deep dive.
Of course, it's always a pleasure.